Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Cavs down in Houston, getting ready to take on the Rockets tonight. A little bit later in the show, we will talk to Sam Amico from hoopswire.com about the Cavs and NBA as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline. We're going to start out by talking Browns. Last night, Greater Cleveland Sports Awards, a chance for all of the local sports figures to gather together and be honored for last year's achievements. During that time, had a chance to talk to Jacob Phillips. He talked about Jim Schwartz and what his thoughts were about Jim Schwartz and a new defense coming to town.
Excited, obviously, he has a resume, and you see the players that he's been able to coach, over this time, and super excited for it. Super excited to learn. Super excited to be around. Him and, the depth of his knowledge. So, just kind of grasping onto that moment and, can't wait till the football rolls back around.
Again, Jacob Phillips talking to Mary Kay Cabot from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com at the Greater Cleveland Sports Awards. Not a surprise at all that players are excited to get a fresh start in a new defense, trying to get things right. Schwartz has that kind of reputation, having been a defensive coordinator for so long. All right, this is according to Pro Football Focus, best landing spots for the top 10 defensive free agents in 2023. No secret, Browns need some defensive tackles, and defensive tackle Javon Hargrave to the Browns. They say that Pro Football Focus says Browns' best landing spot for Hargrave. Hargrave could be considered the best pass rusher available in free agency this offseason. He's coming off back-to-back years of 90.0 plus pass rush grades, according to Pro Football Focus, including combined 18.5 sacks, tied for 18th among defensive linemen. 118 pressures, also tied for 11th since 2021. Jim Schwartz has some familiarity with Hargrave. He did have him in his final season as the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia in 2020. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. So Quincy, Hargrave, a guy, if he does reach that free agent market, I would assume Jim Schwartz would have some appeal to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be appeal there for Javon Hargrave. There's going to be appeal there for a lot of defensive, especially interior defensive linemen, because this is a system where not only defensive tackles can play in and play well, then where they can thrive. This has been one where Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley in Detroit thrived in, had those big numbers. It's a wide set, so you have a lot of room. And then also when you look at the roster and you go, okay, well, they got Myles Garrett there, so that's going to attract a double team. So you know that you're going to be able to find some space there for yourself on that defensive line. Is going to be very attractive. And also, Jim Schwartz is an established name amongst NFL circles, right? You know what you're getting with Jim Schwartz in the defense. There's not a lot of guessing, right? With other defensive coordinators, it'd be like, hey, I don't know how I work with this system or this and that. But I think Javon Hargrave might be somebody who would be interested. I think a lot of guys, veterans around the league, are going to be interested just because of the familiarity that they're going to have with that name.
Yeah, I would agree. And he's going to put the defensive lineman in a position to be successful. I know you've dealt with this question on Untitled Unfiltered. Is the Browns' defense an easy fix?
I would say that we knew what the problem was on defense, right? And it wasn't necessarily that we weren't talented enough on defense. It was that people didn't trust what they were doing for whatever reason. And Jim Schwartz is somebody that you can't trust the positions that he's putting you in to be. So I would think that it's not going to be that difficult of a fix, because I don't think the problem was something that was extremely difficult to fix. It was just an annoying problem to have over the year.
All right. What do you think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's future is in Jim Schwartz's defense?
I think he can thrive, especially if we get better at defensive tackle and he doesn't have to worry about running into guards as much. I think he could thrive. Look, a lot of what's made of his instincts is about comfort, right? When we talk about a linebacker's instincts and we talk about anybody's instincts, is their comfort in the situation and what they're being asked to do, and their ability to do that. And JOK, he had a lot of comfort early on in his career, but just kind of lost it. I think they're going to be asking him to do some stuff. It's going to be more stable. It's going to be a lot more clear. He'll be more comfortable. He'll be much better.
Yeah, whenever I heard them talking about paring down the menu and getting them to play fast, it's like, don't complicate defense. It's like defined roles, go find the ball, go tackle the guy with the ball. That's as difficult as it needs to be.
Yeah, and it's like they played him a lot at will linebacker, right? So it's not like he had like a ton of responsibility or moved around a lot. And sometimes with players, like if you don't give them something that they feel like it is a challenge, they're not going to play up to their ability, right? And I think JOK probably wanted to be challenged more. He probably wanted to cover more athletic tight ends. He probably wanted to be deep middle on some Tampa 2 looks and want to have to carry guys up the middle of the seam and do things that he knows he's good at that are very difficult to do, but he wasn't really asked to do that. He was kind of being used like anybody else. And again, these players are just like us, and we want to be challenged at our job so we can be the best version of ourselves. And I think he wanted to be challenged too, and I just don't think he found that challenge.
Yeah, the other thing is I think he was another guy. They asked him to do some things that weren't his strengths, and I think that was the case for a couple of the cornerbacks as well. Denzel Ward comes to mind. Put guys in position to be successful, and they'll want to play hard.
Yeah, it's really that simple. Like, you just got to figure out, hey, what do the very talented players on this roster do well? Okay, let's have them do that. I think Bill Belichick has the quote that defines football essentially, which is football is a very simple game made complicated by very dumb men. Right, which is to say, we make this a lot more difficult on ourselves, right? Because you got these stringent rules and these defenses that we want teams and guys to fit in, and we don't want to give any leeway. Where Bill Belichick, the way he runs his system is, hey, you're good at these two things. You're going to do these two things. Okay, you're going to do these two things, right? You notice the reason why Belichick players, they're not great in free agency, or there's not a great track record of success with them in free agency, is because guys take them from New England and say, hey, you are good at these two things. Let me have you do these 8 things. And that don't work because he was good at 2 things, Bill's good at figuring out what you can do, how you can move well, and then putting you in position to do those things that you do well. That's what a good coach does. And there's a lot of players who do a lot of things well on this defense. He's got to put them in the right position to do those things well. I
agree. That's my new definition of coaching. Find out what a player does well and ask him to do it. That's from now on. That is our definition of coaching on Sports4CLE. All right.
It is optimization, right? Truly.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hello, I'm a big Browns fan, and I just wondered some replacements for Jadeveon Clowney. As you know, he says he's 95% sure he's not coming back to Cleveland, which we need somebody else opposite of Myles Garrett. A few free agents that come to mind: Melvin Ingram, he's pretty good. You have Yannick Ngakoue, Benny Curry from the Jets. It's his second year, and he's been pretty good, and he's more like a D tackle. He's probably switching around as D tackle at the end. You also have Keelan Farrell from Las Vegas. He was the 4th overall pick from Clemson. He wasn't the best, but he's been a big run stopper in Raiders defense. Larry Ogunjobi, bring him back to Cleveland maybe, you never know. John Franklin Myers is another name that comes to mind. I just wanted to know your thoughts. Thank you. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I would like him to, and I've heard a couple of people mention this, instead of getting the high-end, 10, 11, 12, $14 million, go get 2 $5 million guys that are going to produce somewhat.
And I also wouldn't underestimate the confidence that Jim Schwartz has in his ability to get more out of some of the young defensive tackles on this team than what Joe Woods did. And given that we have been fairly critical of Joe Woods, I would also make it fair to assume, let's not assume that Joe Woods was getting the most out of these guys, right? That these guys are just who they are because that's what they look like with Joe Woods, right? Who knows? The right person might get a hold of Jordan Elliott he might turn into a decent player. Same thing could be said for Perion Winfrey, who showed some flashes this year. But let's say the right coach gets a hold of him, all of a sudden Perion Winfrey looks like a starter. So, the free agent names, we know that they're good, but the problem hasn't been that we have guys that we don't know that are good. We knew that a lot of these guys are good, right? I could go down a list of players that we knew are good that didn't play well this year for whatever reason. John Johnson, we know he's good. He was good in L.A. Denzel Ward, we know he was good. He's good, been good before, you know what I mean? So, yeah, as much as the names would give us immediate comfort, I would say also what's going to be real important for this team is what can they get out of the names already on the roster, because those names are going to be important, right? Especially Jordan Elliott and Perion Winfrey. You got to get something out of those guys, and you got to get something significant, and that's what I'm hoping that Jim Schwartz can bring to this team.
All right, I'm going to reference it again. Find out what those guys do well and ask them to do that. And don't ask them to do the other things that they don't do as well. So let's hope Jim Schwartz unlocks the talents that they have that made them NFL draft choices. Quincy Carrier.
Yeah, and to that point,
go ahead.
My bad. To that point, you might want to add in, like, okay, let's say Perion Winfrey, what he does really well is he attacks and he can get penetration there, but he's not going to be somebody who holds a double team. Instead of having Perion Winfrey try to do both, just have Perion do that and sign somebody to take the double team, right? It takes that kind of like commitment to it to fix these things, but I think it doesn't all have to be in one player. They might sign somebody who's really good at this, or they might find somebody in camp who's really good at this, and they'll be like, okay, this is going to be the guy that does this. This is going to be the guy that does that. I think a lot of Joe Woods tried to have a lot of guys who had the answer to a lot of different problems without having to switch out personnel. And we found out that that's just not a sustainable way to build a defense.
Yeah, and Jim Schwartz has already said they're going to be waving defensive linemen in. That's the way he does it. Mm-hmm. He likes to rotate them and have a number of them playing. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns. We'll hear from Albert Breer, Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Albert Breer from Monday Morning Quarterback was on 92.3 The Fans show earlier today, or actually yesterday afternoon, and talked about what he expected the Browns to do next season and this offseason.
They could have like a big swing or two in them. I think they have to, really find out about Kevin Stefanski, get more out of Deshaun Watson. I think there's a lot on the line this offseason for a lot of people in that building. Like, I do think to some degree you give Deshaun Watson and you give the coaches a mulligan on how the end of the year went, because it was such a weird year, so I think to some degree, you chalk it up to the guy hadn't played football in almost 2 years, and, there's a lot that goes into playing the game at that position. I don't think you get the same sort of mulligan next year, so I think a lot of it is going to be, a lot of the focus this offseason is going to be building an offense for Deshaun Watson, because I'm not sure that he's the best fit for, the traditional offense, the traditional, Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak offense that Kevin Stefanski's been running his first 3 years in Cleveland. So that's going to be a big focus, I think, retrofitting the offense for Deshaun Watson. Then obviously you're doing the scheme stuff on defense, too, with Jim Schwartz coming in. But I certainly think, with the draft pick situation that they're in, that they don't have first-round picks the next 2 years. I certainly could see where maybe you take a swing in free agency or you try to do something creative, like a DeAndre Hopkins or someone like that.
And Quincy, I agree. There's a lot riding on this upcoming season for not only Kevin Stefanski but Andrew Berry. They got to find a way to get this right in a hurry.
No, I think they're at a crossroads. Like, legitimately at a crossroads here, right? If you have a good year this year, you're probably going to be good for probably the next 10 years, right? You're not I don't know how good, but you'll be good for the next 10 years, right? You'll have stability at quarterback, stability at head coach, stability at GM, right? If you have a good, relatively expectations-filled year, that's what you have, right? Because you'll have a good quarterback. Like, you'll have everything the other teams have had for years that we did not, right? Good quarterback, stability at coaching, stability in the front office. If you lose this year or you have another stinky year like they've had the last couple, and we're talking about same old, right? Where we're going to be getting rid of a coach, we're going to be doing this and that, so what kind of franchise does this team want to be going forward? It's going to be heavily dependent on what they do with this opportunity that they have this year, right? They got to make the most of it.
Yeah, and they're going to, I think he hit on it, they're going to try to bring in a couple of big name guys. Along those lines, this from Dog Pound Daily, 3 free agents the Browns should aggressively pursue. Number 3, they have McCole Hardman, wide receiver from the Chiefs, has been banged up lately and has not played as much. Number 2, name we've talked about before, Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle from the San Diego Chargers. Number 1, Marcus Davenport, edge rusher from the New Orleans Saints. I don't know. Your thoughts on those? None of those really jump out at me and say, yeah, boy, I'd be excited as all get out if they get them.
I don't think we need the excitement move. I like, the more I think about it, I just don't think we need it. Because this defense, as currently constructed, should be a decent defense. And, there's no reason why they shouldn't be good. Even with the defensive tackles that they have, they should probably be better and get better performances out of these guys. So, yeah, I would say, a Marcus Davenport, we're going to have to live in not day 1 of free agency, but, day 3 of free agency life, right? Where it's hey, we might get this guy. Maybe the big name we get is, a veteran that's, 33 years old, but that is what the plan is going to be for this team going forward. So, those are the guys that we're probably going to have to get used to. The days of being able to, look, we've had some great summers, Dave, trading for Odell Beckham, getting all these star players. And now it's time to just focus on having good falls, right? In winters.
All right, one free agent who can change the Browns' defense. This also from Dog Pound Daily, and this goes along in the lines of an older veteran. Jonathan Hankins, defensive tackle, Cowboys. 10-year NFL veteran, still getting it done at a high level. Won't give you 40-plus snaps a game, but you can expect him to play in running situation early down. Big guy, 340. Exactly the type of player the Browns need to clog the middle, take up double teams, free up other players around him. That the kind of guy you're thinking about that might help?
Yeah, like nice names like that, right? Where you can plug in some guys to be in some spots. So they're going to do an assessment, right? They're going to do in free agency, and they're going to decide, what do we need, right? Because that's what you want to do in free agency. You don't want to take a gamble. You have to look at your roster and you have to say, hey, there is stuff that we need to take care of today. And that's what you do in free agency. After that, it's what will we need in the future. That's the draft. And then you sprinkle in a couple extra guys who's hey, this guy's not ready yet. This guy's not here yet. We need to get a guy like Jonathan Hankins in here real quick. You know what I mean? That's going to be the process. They have to figure out what they have, what they don't have. What they feel like, hey, maybe we want to hold off on spending a bunch of money on a Jonathan Hankins because we feel like maybe Jordan Elliott, if he's used the right way, the way I see on tape, he can handle these things, and that's the same thing we would ask Jonathan Hankins. So let's see if he can actually do that in my defense. And then if he can't, you would move to something like that, right? I think that's going to be the process. It's what you have to do when you're a team that's going to be up against the cap in a couple years. It's kind of just how they have to move now.
All right. I know you've addressed this on your show, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Who are the players, coaches that the Browns have to go after in your mind for the upcoming season?
The players and coaches, well, I would say they already got one of them, right? They have to improve the defensive coaching. That's a must. I'm kind of a little concerned about special teams. I mean, that's simply because every year it seems like we fix one hole just for another catastrophic one to pop up. And I feel like if there's any of them that are going to be catastrophic this year, it's going to be the coach. It's going to be the special teams. So I'm kind of worried about that. But again, like the names that they need, I don't think are big names. I think they need, maybe if you do get a big name, maybe you can get a DeForest Buckner trade or something like that. But they're just positions that you want to hit, that you want to take care of. And maybe some of that will be in the draft. I think offensive line will be hit heavy in the draft more than people expect because they have some cap stuff there that's kind of not sustainable for this team and things like that. So I don't know if I'm going to go with specific individual players as who they need to get, but they need to have focuses in specific areas. And I think D-tackle, free safety is another one that I could see. And maybe even somewhere along the offensive, well, no more money on the offensive line. Never mind. They got too much money on the offensive line. Maybe wide receiver. But even then, the odds of them adding somebody on the offense with that's going to be big money, I think is low because they have so many players that are big money on that offense right now.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, continue talking Browns. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, again, the topic that I know you've addressed. Why do you think the Browns will be really good in 2023?
Well, I think that they have spent a lot of time figuring and tinkering out what's wrong with certain elements of this offense, right? Kevin gets here in 2020, you get decent quarterback play, but then that kind of erodes in 2021. You upgrade the quarterback position, cool. And then you do some things at the quarterback position to make sure that there's a baseline of play that you're going to get there, that you can at least get to 500. And, say what you want about Deshaun when he came back. You did go 3-3 with him. So you have that, and then the defense falls apart. And now you go and you take steps to make sure the defense can't fall apart. So we've made steps to make sure the offense can't fall apart. We've made steps to make sure the defense can't fall apart. They can't be, I hesitate to say this, it would be hard to be so bad next year, right? Like, unless something catastrophic happens to one of the players, I just don't see this team being that bad next year. And I think they're actually going to be good. There's room for it. Like, this defense could take a dramatic leap just with the right mind there. This offense could take a dramatic leap just because Deshaun Watson has an offseason and he's going to be starting week 1 and being in an offense that's designed for him from week 1 on, right? Those things are important, right? Your defensive coordinator and making sure the guys are in the right spot, that's very important. Your quarterback is the most important thing. Those are the 2 things that are going to be having the biggest change this year. And I think that's a big enough reason to expect that this team would be different. And for people who have a hard time seeing the optimism here, imagine if the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, not last offseason, but right now, and he was ready to play week 1, right? We would have a lot different feeling about this. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying is probably we're going to get the better showing from Deshaun Watson because he's going to be in his offense, not just the offense that they had to build that Jacoby can run.
All right. Flip side of it. What could go wrong in 2023 then?
I mean, outside of the obvious stuff, right? Because whenever you say go wrong, injuries are always something that can pop up. But one of the things that can go wrong is, hey, maybe they don't make the adjustments that I'm assuming they're going to make on offense, right? Maybe they just roll this back out there. You get the same result from the quarterback position. Or maybe defensively, these guys just aren't good for whatever reason, right? And you run into a situation where you're not playing well again on that side of the ball. These are things that can happen similar to the year before. Cade York could have an atrocious year from field goal, and that could cost us a bunch of close games. By sticking with them, we could have one of the worst special teams in the NFL. There are some things I want to keep an eye on as the offseason progresses to make sure that there is a baseline of how bad things can get with them, because that's a very important thing to track. I've learned that over the last 4 years. And you just want to keep track of those things. But those are the things that could go wrong.
Yeah. This was an interesting thing. So Jack Duffin tweets this out, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Browns have 3 outside cornerbacks. Greg Newsome not thrilled about playing the slot. We're starting to hear some whispers. He does have an agent who can be difficult. So the thought would be try to flip Newsome for a guy like Jerry Jeudy and then sign a good slot corner in free agency because they don't cost as much, being slot corners, as the outside corners do. They also have A.J. Green. So if you could get a young, up-and-coming wide receiver for somebody like a Greg Newsome, would you do it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that cornerback surplus because Denzel Ward can't go anywhere. And that would be the obvious guy to move in this situation is because he's older and more expensive, but he can't be moved because he is expensive, right? So you're going to keep Denzel Ward, and it's between Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome. Now, they might, and this might surprise people, I wouldn't be shocked because right now we're hearing Greg Newsome's the guy that might be moved. It could also be Martin Emerson. It might make more sense for it to be Martin Emerson just because they're both similar level of good, but Martin's on a shorter contract than what Greg is because Greg at least has that 5th-year option. But Martin was drafted a year later, so they're going to be expiring around the same time. You just have more options with Greg Newsome. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. But there is a surplus, and you can't really play 3 outside corners, and they're all 3 outside corners.
Yeah, A.J. Green is there too, and when he's been put on the field, he's actually done well. And if you're going to make a trade like some people want, you're going to have to give up something that's pretty good to get the type of talent that you. That's just the way those things work. So
yeah, it's always hilarious when you hear these trade scenarios. Like, what if we can give up this guy? Can we trade John Johnson for Jerry Jeudy? No, nobody would. You wouldn't want to do that. Why would they want to do that?
Yeah. All right, 3 free agents the Browns likely will not consider. This from Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, DJ Chark. Someone's going to overpay him. Some believe he could get between $8 and $10 million a year. He had 500 yards receiving. Number 2, Jesse Bates. Again, don't think Barry would justify $12 million plus a year for a safety. And number 1, Daron Payne. Barry certainly is not going to give defensive tackle $20 million a year. Payne could easily get that. So these 3 are being kind of eliminated due to what the belief is what they will attract on the open market. And those are probably all pretty fair assessments, I would think. Do you disagree with any of them?
I disagree with the reason they don't think the Browns are going to get Jesse Bates, because they say like he doesn't want to leave Cincinnati, and I don't know. I've been following that situation relatively closely. He wants to go. He's franchise tagged there, and they just drafted Dax Hill to replace him, so he's going to be gone from Cincinnati. I don't think the Browns would be interested in him because he is a cover one safety, right? Like he's somebody you want to have a lot of space there. I don't think the Browns are going to be running a lot that's going to make him a fit in that system. DJ Shark's interesting because I have no idea what the wide receiver market is going to look like. If it does trend in that direction, he is young enough to where he could go up, but maybe some people get excited about like Amico Harmon and overpay him, and that leads to, him not going for as much because, again, we're talking about a wide receiver who has put up some nice numbers in the past, but is coming off of a 500-yard season.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Charles Boykin in Dayton, Ohio. I'm a loyal Browns backer, and also I've been following the Browns since Ozzie Newsome and Clay Matthews. I'm totally confused this year. I'm trying to find out what actual rounds that we have picks in this coming draft. I've gone on Yahoo, Dogs by Nature. All of them have us picking different rounds. Some rounds they don't have us picking at all. So would you let us know what actual rounds that the Browns are going to be able to pick in and how many picks they have in those rounds and how many total picks do we have? Thank you again. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So the Browns have the 43rd pick in the second round. They also have a third-round pick at 99, 2 in the fourth, one from Minnesota, as well as their own. They have a fifth-round pick, 2 fifth-round picks, a sixth-round pick, and a seventh-round pick. So a total of 8, but only 2 in the top 100. Quincy, when you look at the draft picks that the Browns have, what areas do you think they're going to upgrade in free agency because they need immediate help? What areas do you think they look to the draft to kind of at least patchwork if they can?
Yeah, and then also kind of remember in the third round, we can add some comp picks depending on who gets hired at different positions as well. That's something that gets announced later, though. But yeah, as far as like, okay, so you get what you need, right? They need a safety, more of a free safety, right? So you're probably going to move off John Johnson, designate him June 1st, and then get you a free safety that way. Then you're probably going to get a defensive tackle. You want to get at least one starter, right? Deron Payne, somebody that we've mentioned, but it's probably not him. Maybe it's DeForest Buckner. Maybe it's somebody else, right? Maybe you can get that contract restructured to the point where that makes sense. And you probably fill those 2 positions where you get some starters there, but the draft's probably where you're going to want to hit everything else. Offensive line, would not be surprised if they draft a center because, hey, look, Ethan Posick would be a re-sign and Nick Harris would be a one-year deal because he's on the last year of his rookie deal. So even if you do stick with Nick Harris, it's not a long-term solution. It's another one-year solution. So you got to figure out something there, right? Something long-term. Probably going to draft somebody there. I would say one of the guard positions, you're probably going to draft another guard there and maybe a tackle. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they move up in the second round. And this is just my feeling. They probably move up for a tackle. I don't think it's to replace Jed Wills immediately, but Jed Wills, he's going to come up. He's expensive. Conklin's expensive. They need to save money at one of these tackle positions, and honestly at one of the guard positions, and they can't afford to spend money at center, right? They really should be paying 2 to 3 of these offensive linemen. Right now they're paying 4, or projected to pay 4. So that's just not sustainable. So I would say center, guard, the whole offensive line. I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a couple of them.
All right, along those lines, this is how many offensive players are getting $10 million annual per year salaries on the playoff teams. So the Eagles and Chiefs have 5 offensive players, $10 million or better. The Bengals have 2. Now that's because Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are still on their rookie deal. 49ers have 4. You see the Browns already have 7, and it would be 8 if they extend Donovan Peoples-Jones in that area, which some people think they may be kind of trending to do. So that kind of goes back to what we just said. They have a lot of guys that are high-priced, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that eventually they got to correct that.
Mm-hmm. This is why I don't think they can keep another center or anything like that, right? Yeah, they got to figure out, because I think the mark you want to be at is where Kansas City is at. Kansas City is at 5, maybe 6 at the most, but they got to be at 5 or 6, and they got to figure out how they're going to get there. And it's probably going to take, I don't know, maybe Wyatt Teller gets moved off from, or maybe Joe Bitonio does, but one of those two. Long term, they're probably not going to be able to stay here. I think they're going to go all in as much as possible for these next 2 years, but after that, it's anybody's guess who's going to be left. And
the other thing is you always pay your quarterback. You usually pay a wide receiver or a pass catcher, and you usually pay a couple of linemen. That's usually the structure between who's getting the big money on the offensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you pay David Njoku, you're already paying Amari Cooper. You're talking about adding in Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't know if Donovan gets that extension with Cleveland, to be honest with everybody, because I look at somebody like David Bell and kind of the same mode as a Donovan Peoples-Jones, but they feel like might be more talented than a Donovan Peoples-Jones. So you look at what this team does, and it's what other teams around the league do. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, they all do it. If you want to see who's going to get extended, who doesn't, look at who they've been drafting. And that tells you everything, right? They've been wanting to get a tackle for a while, right? So that tells you that one of those tackle positions they want to get cheaper. Wide receiver, they've been drafting guys there for a little while there, right? That tells you they want to get one of these wide receiver positions cheaper. Same thing with running back. So that's what I would be on the lookout for.
When you look at what this offense needs with Deshaun Watson, what type of wide receiver, skill set wise, do you think it needs to make Deshaun Watson even more effective?
I think you need a 50-50 ball guy. I think, Mike Williams, somebody he had great success with in Clemson, right? Then you go to the NFL and DeAndre Hopkins, somebody he had great success with in Houston. Both those guys, they're not the fastest wide receivers in the world, but they're good 50-50 ball guys. And he doesn't have one of those guys on here, right? Donovan Peoples-Jones is about as close as it gets, and he's not really a 50-50 ball guy. I think you need a 50-50 ball guy, right? I think you need somebody who you could put one-on-one and you could throw it up there, and they're physical enough to get there. Maybe that becomes David Njoku, right? And that's what David ends up being for Deshaun. But you need somebody that he could trust to throw it up there, right? Think of like Kelvin Benjamin, those couple of years he was in Carolina, right? Alden Tate, somebody in Cincinnati nobody really talks about. He's somebody who used to do that role for them. Anquan Bolden for the Cardinals used to do this, right? You need a 50-50 ball guy because he trusts his wide receivers to get up there and make a play, but right now he has nobody who gets up there and makes a play with it.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight very much, Quincy. Thanks very much.
No problem, man. You have a great day.
All right, Quincy Carrier. Make sure you check him out. Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers getting ready for a game down in Texas against the Houston Rockets. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers getting ready to play the Houston Rockets tonight down in Houston. We also find out Donovan Mitchell listed as questionable for the game against the Rockets tonight. Re-injured that groin that kept him out several games late in the game against the Knicks on Tuesday. And then Kevin Love is also experiencing back spasms. Didn't participate in shoot-around this morning. He has been added and is listed as questionable as well. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. And Sam, young team has been inconsistent, and they're kind of banged up a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of a double whammy there when you're young, and then you start missing guys, especially when one of those guys is your leading scorer and Donovan Mitchell, your three-time All-Star. But that said, they really need to start playing better regardless of who's out there or what's going on, because, they haven't been bad. They just haven't been great. And this is kind of the time of year when you want to start being at your best. You don't have to do it right now, but you want to get in the habit of playing, consistent style of playoff basketball, because you're presumably going to the playoffs, so you want to get used to overcoming some of those nicks and bruises and just be more cohesive and get it together a little bit.
JB Bickerstaff talked about what the Cavs needed to work on after that Knicks loss.
We can improve our spacing, give guys room to operate, give them room to go to work. But again, this to me wasn't just about that last stretch. This is something we just have to continue to get better at sustaining. We did a job coming out, building a lead, and then, just weren't able to sustain it.
For you, where did you see kind of take that turn?
It's the discipline point of it, and just being okay with making the simple play that's in front of you, both ends of the floor. We just have to do a better job of sustaining what's working. I think we've just gotten away from that.
And Sam, it's got to be frustrating because you can, if you watch, you can see exactly what he's talking about. It's like, well, we've done that really well all game. Let's switch it up a little bit. And it's like, no.
Yeah, keep doing what works. But he said it best right there. Make the simple play. Sometimes when you're a young team, you get caught up in wanting to, be on the Instagram highlights or making the headlines. But sometimes the simple pass, the simple shot is the thing that works best when it comes to actually winning games. And and JB's right. The Cavs do that a lot, but sometimes they get away from it. When they get away from it, it spells trouble. Just because then it leads to turnovers, it leads to easy baskets for the other team, and your best serve. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do when you're a pretty good team, to just make the simple play most of the time, save the highlights for the blowouts. But when you're a young team, you're figuring that out. And like he said too, spacing is a big thing. You got to give guys room to create. You got to move the basketball, make that extra pass. And every time, it's just basketball one-on-one. The more you pass and the more you cut and the more you move, the easier shots you're going to get. And sometimes it's easy to get away from that during the course of an 82-game season. So these are just things that they need to clean up a little bit.
Yeah, here's another thing that's concerning. I won't say it's troubling, but late in games, the Cavs just haven't been as sharp as they want to be. Bench is unreliable. I think that's absolutely fair. 12 points against the Knicks. Since the 8-1 start, Cavs are 2 games over 500. But they're still 9 games, 10 games over 500. So they're in a good place. You got to see them starting to develop. And I realize there's some new guys, and every game that Donovan Mitchell is unable to play, it's one less game that they can figure out how he fits in and where things move in the chess piece on the floor.
Yeah, well, you just said it. They're 29-20 overall. So that 8-1 start did give them a little bit of a cushion. It maybe made them a little bit comfortable. Veteran teams can kind of flick a switch and turn it on and still win games. Younger teams with a young core, you're still talking Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, even Donovan Mitchell. Those guys are younger players. Lamar Stevens, Isaac Okoro, even Chetty. These guys are, they're not playoff seasoned guys other than maybe Mitchell. So, it's just a matter of learning those veteran habits, when to turn it on, when you can turn it on, when you can kind of pull back a little bit. I will say this, Dave. They're 29-20, right? Which is all that matters. Number 2, yeah, they had a bad loss. They've had a couple of bad losses, lost to Spurs on the road in a game they shouldn't have lost to a Warriors team that didn't have any of their players at home. But there's no one dominant team in the NBA this year. Everybody is kind of going through or has gone through what the Cavs are going through. The Celtics lost at home to the Magic. The Bucks got creamed at home to the Hornets. During the course of an 82-game season, weird things can happen. But if you're the Cavs, what you're thinking is, okay, we've experienced some of those lulls of the season. Let's try to put our pedal to the metal right now and get moving into the All-Star break and then get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, agree with you 100%. There's just some things that they got to get corrected quickly, and this is another one. Opponents are now hitting 42% of their three-pointers against the Cavs in the last 15 games. During that stretch, they have the 17th rated defense during that time period. So that's this team's defense has been really good prior to that, and a lot of that's just, I don't want to say effort, it's attention to detail, I guess, is a better way to put it. They got to get back to that, and now.
Yeah, but and that's when you're talking about 2 games over 500 over the last 40 games, that's where it boils down to, because if you're playing good defense, you can make those mistakes on offense. You can have not great spacing on offense. You can not score as much as you normally would on offense, but you know, your defense, if those things aren't clicking, your defense is what's going to carry you. And they knew that. They saw that earlier in the season, the Cavs. So, you know, it is important to get back to that again, because you're thinking about the big picture. You want to think about the playoffs, and that's where the game slows down, can come to a grind. That's where truly, you know, your defense is what's going to carry you a lot of times, and your defense could help lead to upsets in the playoffs as well. So, you know, that's a critical part. And like you said, Dave, you really hit the nail on the head. It's attention to detail, you know, and just being focused. And it's easy to do. Historically, throughout the NBA in January, it seems like people are just waiting to get to that All-Star break before they turn it back on. January is always a tough month for teams with, you know, primarily a young core. So they've just got to get through that, pick it back up. And, you know, if their defense is clicking, then we aren't going to hear about any more of this 500 basketball.
Yeah, and again, they kind of had the reputation early of teams were getting to be like, we got to go and deal with Cleveland, and that is a team that is just going to be all over. And they got to get back to that, where teams don't want to face their defense, because that's an advantage.
Yeah, you know, it has a huge psychological advantage, especially when they're playing home games and have the crowd behind them. But, you know, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, those guys, you don't really need to question their defense very often. Sometimes out on the perimeter, it just seems like they struggle from time to time. You know, what you want to do is funnel your guy into the big guys sometimes, and instead of letting them just stand out there and take three-pointers. And you know, they know all this. They've been through all this and have watched the film of what not to do and what to do. And it's really, I think the effort's there most of the time. You know, I don't want to question their effort, but like I said, sometimes it's just being totally locked in mentally, which can be a problem sometimes. But again, when they are locked in, you're right. The opponents don't want to see this team and this defense, but they've got to get back to that, because right now it's just not been consistent.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will talk a little bit about trades. NBA trade deadline coming up in a couple of weeks. Could the Cavs be active? We'll talk about that when we return. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Cavs here on Sports4CLE with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. NBA trade deadline coming up in a couple of weeks. Names we've heard most often mentioned as far as the Cavs trading guys are Karis LeVert and Cedi Osman. Sam, what do you think? What do you think they can get for Osman, LeVert? Package them. Is there anything out there that would move the needle for them?
Well, you know, I think they're hesitant to trade LeVert, and understandably so. You know, he's playing about 31 minutes a game. So if you're taking him out, you're removing a big piece of everything you're doing. While he's not been super consistent, he has had certainly his moments. He's well liked by his teammates. He fits in the locker room, but he also has an expiring contract, which in today's NBA is extremely valuable for a lot of teams that either are trying to contend and want the contract to come off the books, or they're getting ready to play the NBA draft lottery and want the contract to come off the books. So it's extremely valuable. Kobe Altman would certainly gauge the trade market, probably taking quite a bit of calls on LeVert as opposed to making them. If he could really get something that moves the needle, then yeah, I think that he would shake it up. We've seen Kobe Altman do that in the past where we don't think he's going to do much and he blows it up. I'm certainly not going to do that with this team because, it's, even though they've been closer to 500 lately, it's still a young developing team for the most part with lots of promise. So you don't want to mess with that too much. I think Chetty potentially could be moved. It's not going to be something huge, but it could be somebody who fits. If you remember, Dave, when they traded for Ricky Rubio, nobody was excited, but he came in and he fit. And that's what they're kind of looking for right now is somebody who would come and fit and take them to another level, while the trade itself might not make a splash in terms of media and social media.
So the Cavs, Mavs, Lakers, Bucks, Pelicans, Raptors have all talked about Bojan Bogdanovic and acquiring him from the Pistons. Sam, the Cavs don't have enough to get him, do they?
That's what the Pistons are telling everybody, but I don't know. I think that they're trying to play hardball to try to up the offer. I will say this: they do. I know the Pistons like Karis LeVert, and I know, I've heard that. Well, they may pursue him in free agency after the season, which I can't imagine doing. If you're Detroit, you're not going to be a great free agent destination, and I don't know what they would be able to pay him. So. Look, LeVert for Bogdanovic matches salary-wise. You could just swap the two of them. Now the Pistons are saying we want a lot more. We want a first-round pick for him. For Bogdanovic, I don't think. I think they're just driving up the price, and are realistically, when it comes to trade deadline, they're going to realize that nobody wants to give him a first-round pick. So I think it's not outside the realm of a possibility that the Cavs could land Bogdanovic. Right now, it doesn't look real promising because the Pistons are driving up the price. But again, everybody's, February 8th and 9th, when that trade deadline bell is ready to, ring, teams will back down from their price. So obviously, a very nice player, a veteran player, a wing, perimeter shooter. I think it's a long shot, yes, but it's not impossible for the Cavs to land Bogdanovic.
All right, we've also heard the Hornets may be willing to trade Oubre, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier. Any of those guys fit with what the Cavs would need? Would it be an upgrade that would move the needle?
Yeah, I don't think for what the Cavs are what they would have to give up for those players, I don't think it would move the needle enough unless, when you talk about Hayward, you're going to have to talk about Kevin Love's salary. Maybe that would be something that would be valuable to the Hornets because, Kevin Love's salary is coming off the books. The problem with Hayward is he just hasn't been able to stay on the court. Fine player, but, obviously very injury prone. Just has undergone a lot of surgeries and stuff. So again, is Gordon Hayward moving the needle for you for the Cavs? If he can stay healthy, probably, as long as you don't have to give up core pieces. And I know Kevin Love's kind of a core piece, not as much this year as he was last. But I would say if there's anybody on that roster from the Hornets, it would be Hayward that the Cavs could potentially work a deal out for.
All right, one more before I let you go. Doug McDermott of the Spurs is another guy. Probably wouldn't cost nearly as much. Is that something that would add an element that the Cavs could use, and could you see that potentially happening?
Yeah, I would think out of everybody, that would be the most realistic chance. McDermott from the Spurs, 31 years old, 6'7", knocks down shots. If you give him 7 shots a game, he's probably going to knock down 5 of them from the perimeter. Just a guy who can, We heard J.B. Bickerstaff talk about spacing. McDermott can space the court. He doesn't do a whole lot else, but he will knock down shots. Fairly decent athlete, and I think that the Cavs could get him. I wrote in my column today that they could probably get him for Chetty and Dylan Windler. The money would work, wouldn't cost the Cavs a whole lot, and all of a sudden you've solved your perimeter shooting issues. Not to mention a guy who's a veteran, and veteran guys always help you in your playoff push. So I would think that that's somebody who's very much on their radar, and that's the kind of low-level trade that, again, not a lot of pizzazz behind it, but it could be something that would help them immensely. Either he or Alec Burks, who I also think they like from the Pistons, could be another possibility.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, as always. Great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Sam.
All right, Dave, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, all things Cavs, as well as the entire NBA. Check them out. Always really good stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.